Hey gang, we are in southwestern Minnesota right now. We're actually just north of a little town called Clements. That's to the south of us. To the north of us, maybe 10 miles, is Redwood Falls. And we're on a farm, and we're going to walk this road to this location where something really bad happened over 100 years ago. Really bad. Now there's a book that I read. It's called Sundown to Sunrise, and it's aptly named. The author, Marty Seifert. Really good book, and it tells about the incident that happened here that's absolutely infamous for Minnesota. Not a really well-known story across the country or across the world, but it will be probably after we run this. I want to thank Max, who turned me on to this story a while back, maybe a couple of years ago. So let's take a walk. I'll tell you what happened here. We have permission to be here, and actually the landowner is going to meet us as I finish telling you the main part of the story here off this road. So this farm that we're walking to right now, which by the way is the farm's foundation is there. There's not much left. There are some relics, and it will be very interesting, but this was the perpetrator's farm where he lived with his family. Now, if we go all the way back in the story, it's the Petrie family came here, Harry and Clara. Not here, they had another farm right by Clements. Now, they had one daughter, her name was Maud. They had 3 sons, and 2 of their sons had actually died before they reached the age of 8 years old. Now, Johnson Claude Petrie was younger than Maud, one of the sons. He survived. He went by the name Claude. And they lived here. They owned about 160 acres of prime farmland. And Henry had sold his land to the railroad so that they could establish a station. So he made some good money. He was able to set himself up with a pretty good farm. And on that farm, they had a helper. He was almost like part of the family, almost like a second son, very faithful, very loyal. His name was Frank Schottenbauer. He was a little strange. He never really went out, but he was a good guy. He always had his eye on Maud. Now, Maud was pretty, and he had this secret crush. So life on the farm was good. Now, Henry had one of the first original cars here in Minnesota. You can't really drive back then cars in the winter. I mean, Minnesota snows are legendary every year typically, and they would use the horses and wagons, the teams. Now, there was a town dance coming up, and it was in the summer, so we could take the car. It was going to be a night on the town, so to speak. Maud was responsible. She convinced her mother and father to let her go, provided she would bring a friend with, according to Dad. Dad was very conservative and protective of his daughter. Well, they would drop the 2 off at the dance, and while the dance was going on, Henry and Clara would have dinner in town while the girls danced away and socialized. And the plan was that the 2 girls would be picked up at 9 p.m. sharp. Actually, not that much time, maybe an hour or 2 at the most. And this is where Maud met a young man named William Kleeman. Now, William Kleeman was kind of a ladies' man, although he was a hard worker. He was a smooth talker, a little bit of a smart aleck. He had good wit, and he was very handsome. And I have to say, we're still searching for a picture of him. And I'm hoping by the time of the release here that we find it, but the odds are low. That said, he worked for a man named Omer Streeter, who had a big farm here. So William and Maud were smitten with each other right off the bat. It was almost love at first sight. And interestingly, as William courted Maud to impress her, he spent a good chunk of his money to buy this crude car. And it's kind of funny, this is really before the Model Ts were out yet. He was going to order it off the Sears catalog. Now, this is where Richard Warren Sears, this is where he's from. He got his start here, and you know, everything was the railroad. So it was the motor buggy, the Sears motor buggy. I think it was like $200 or $300. It was wooden, and even the wheels were wooden spokes. I think it was 2 horsepower only. And it arrived on the train. And they had to assemble it at the train station. Yeah. That's how it was in those days out here. I mean, just imagine. You didn't go to the Walmart. You didn't go to the Home Depot. So he really got it because he wanted to impress Maud. He wanted to marry her. Well, it was just a matter of months when William proposed. There was some conflict. Now, William was not religious, and he did not want to get married in the church. And that was kind of a big ordeal they had to get through. Maud went along. She talked her parents into it. They'd be married at the Petrie farm in the house. Where would they live? Well, Henry and Clara would provide them with a house. It was actually the house that Frank was living in. They kind of kicked him out, but it was all good. They told Frank, why don't you move in upstairs in Maud's room? He was like family. He was like a second son. Now Frank was jealous. He was keeping his eye on William. He'd give him the evil eye. They would have the ceremony, it would go well, and the newlyweds would get on the train and go to a hotel in a town called Janesville, their honeymoon. Now, before they returned home, the next week, Maud would be pregnant with their first child, and they would go on to have 4 children, 3 girls and 1 boy. Gladys, Lois, Gordon, and then finally, baby Rosadell. And as they were having these children, they would finally get their own farm, which is where we are at right here. Everything was going great. And then one day the town fathers came up here to this farm, and they said, William, they caught William here, right here at the farm. Maud was inside. And they said, hey, and by the way, I should mention and I think the landowner is going to show us where the original schoolhouse was. It's called Sunrise School, so you get it sundown at sunrise, bad. But the school was, you could see it from, this is like a hill, like a high point right here, this farm. And they said, you know, we have the teacher coming. There's a new teacher. Her name's Mary Snelling. And we need you to board her. And he's like, oh, hemming and hawing. They're like, we'll pay you $19 a month. Oh, okay. He didn't even consult with Maud. He just said, yeah. And he's thinking, Mary Snelling, some old frumpy lady. She can help with the kids, help with some of the chores. This would be a good thing. And again, why did they pick this farm? They picked this farm because the schoolhouse, this was the closest to the schoolhouse. You'd have to walk back and forth every day. Well, it turned out that when Mary Snelling came, she was 21 years old and she was gorgeous, beautiful. So, but her and Maud got along pretty well, and things were working out just as they hoped, where she would get to know the family and help out. So again, all was good. Now Maud and her children, without William typically, would go to church every Sunday, and they'd spend many weekends at her parents, Harry and Clara. And William would come and go. He'd usually make the big dinner. Now one weekend, William would go out to the saloon in town with his friends, playing cards, drinking till late, and when he got home, he heard the Victrola playing. As he rounded the kitchen and faced the living room, he saw the curve of a bare shoulder above the edge of the metal bathtub, which was pulled in front of the roaring fireplace. And this time, there was no bedsheet hanging from the hook he had placed in the ceiling. Several weeks later, Mary Snelling was taken ill. It was March of 1917. They decided that she needed to see the big city doctor, so to speak, so William got the team, put her on the wagon, and escorted her to the train station. It was a weekend, and apparently they had some kind of serious discussion as he was letting her off. He could only stare straight ahead. He was in a trance. He was not happy. He was almost in shock. So he went to the saloon to drink. Now, when he would go to the saloon, typically, he was the life of the party. He was socializing. I mean, everyone knew each other really well here. And this time when he went, he just got his beer and he went to a corner and he was sulking. And people noticed that. It was really odd behavior. So, this is when he would plot an evil plan. This is when he changed. The date was March 24th, 1917. Well, he finally left and hustled back to the Petrie farm. Of course, Maud was there with the kids. The usual family dinner with the in-laws. He tried to hide his feelings when they all got back to this farm here. They got home. William went to the shed. Why? To sharpen an axe. One of the children came, said, "Daddy, what are you doing?" He said, "Oh, you just run along now. I'm just doing my chores." He spent a lot of time in that shed sharpening it to perfection as a storm rumbled in, a big storm. Lightning and thunder. Maud went to bed. She snuggled in with baby Rosadell. 5-year-old Gladys snuggled in with her 3-year-old sister Lois, and 2-year-old Gordon was laying right below in his little bed, and the storm came in, and they all fell fast asleep. And it was not much longer after that that a monster emerged, a monster with a sharp axe. It was William Kleeman with the devil in his eye. He took the axe and he bore down on the head of his beautiful 27-year-old wife with one blow, crushed her skull. Next, he finished off the baby. He ran to the next room and picked Gladys next, the oldest, and then he ended the lives of the rest of his whole family. It was a gory scene. There was blood spreading and splattered everywhere. After he had exterminated his family, he wrote a crude note, a pathetic note. And then he went downstairs and he took a rope he had prepared, and he slung it up over a pipe. I believe it was in the kitchen. And he got a chair and he made a noose, put it around his neck. He went on that chair, got it tight, and he kicked the chair out, and he was hanged. Struggled, strangled, and he was dead. Yes, the Kleemans right here, right up ahead here, were all done for. The next day came and Mary Snelling was returning from the train station, of course. She went to the livery, and this rain had left everything underwater, mud. The man in the stable said no way, but she pleaded with him and she finally got him to get her out here. She walked this road in the mud, in the flood, right here where we're walking from the main road. It was dark now, and the rain was still actually pouring down. First thing she saw right up ahead here was the family dog tied to the porch, soaking wet, chilled to the bone. It was eerie because there was no light coming from inside. You know, usually Maud would have the stove on, there'd be a glow inside, it would be toasty warm, but not so. It was odd, but still she didn't really think anything. She just wanted to get inside, get warm. Well, the door was open. It wasn't unusual. She pushed it open, but there was no light. There was nothing. So she took a match. She knew where the matches were, and she lit it directly in front of her, right in front of her face. And there, to her horror, right in front of her face, was William hanging from the ceiling. She was horrified. Right in front of her face, she screamed. She was frantic. She finally got her wits. She got the chair, the same chair he had kicked from under himself, and with a knife she got up on the chair and cut him down. And then she started to see the trail of clues that surrounded her. Mary went room by room, finding the carnage. She could hardly breathe. There was a telephone. They did have phones. And she called for help. First people to come was the town lawyer, the doctor. They came first, and then the sheriff the next day, of course. You know, the sheriff is miles and miles away for the county. And then, most sadly, the fathers of William and Maud, Harry Petrie and August Kleeman. There was an inquest, and it was quickly determined that it was William who had murdered the family. He had made this note, was pathetic, that someone had broken in and he couldn't protect his family, so he hanged himself. As the bodies were removed, funeral preparations were made, and poor Mary Snelling made preparations to leave the area forever as soon as possible. Very interesting. Well, you say, That's kind of normal. That's what anyone would do. But she was frantic to get out of here. There was something going on. There was something that nobody knew. So she requested a leave, a permanent leave, a resignation. They accepted it. They got another teacher, and she was out of here. Gone, never to be heard from again. So here we are. This is where it happened, guys. Right here. Let's go in just a little bit here and take a peek. Alex Peterson is the man who owns this property now. I believe he bought it from his grandfather. And he's been good enough to allow us to see. I haven't really checked it out other than the road. But he said that the house was on the southwest corner, which would be here. And he said the foundation is still here. So I think it would be maybe in the brush here. So we'll see. But yeah, this is where it happened. So we're going to wait for Alex to get here. And then we're going to pick it up, and he'll tell us a little more detail of what he has found here. All right, catch you in a bit. Okay, so we have Alex Peterson, who is the landowner, and thank you, Alex, for letting us come out here. This is really amazing, very intriguing. Now, Alex has a lot of good information, and he shared some things with me that I didn't even know about. Beyond the foundation, we can look at the schoolhouse location from the distance. We can look at, you say the chicken coop is back over there?
Correct.
And of course, in the fly-in, we saw a little bit of the pump. And so, you know, spontaneous, unscripted, and by the way, you bought this from your grandfather, was it? This land, this farm? This is a working farm.
Correct. Yep. So I bought this from my grandpa from his estate when he passed away, and after he passed away in 2020. But I've got memories of, so prior to when he bought this in '88, he owned apartments, and so I have memories of coming up here when, let's say a tub would have cracked, and he would have brought a tub just to bring it up here, and we would pass by this foundation, and he would tell the story every now and then in his own way, and it never really occurred to me what the gravity of what had happened.
Because you're so young, right?
Correct, yeah. 12, 13.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden it kicked in.
Correct.
And now Alex and your wife, you are basically, I don't want to say anthropologists, but you're really into like preserving and investigating and maybe doing something with this.
Yeah, correct. I mean, it's one of those. It's a piece of history.
I mean, there's been researchers coming here, even paranormal.
Yeah, some paranormal folks had asked to come look at the site right around the time that Marty's book came out.
Right.
And it happened to coincide with a time that my wife was actually pregnant with our 4th child. So if you think about the axe murder, I was about the age of
4.
I was about the age of Mr. Kleeman. My wife's pregnant, due in sometime in March, around the 100th anniversary, and was contacted by some paranormal folks who wanted to explore the site, and I just had to say, I'm not very superstitious, but we're going to hold off.
Oh yeah, you never know.
Right.
So speaking of Marty's book, I mentioned during the storytelling, I got a lot of, most of my information from Marty's book, Sundown at Sunrise, and it is a really good book. I highly recommend. Everybody in these parts probably has it, but I highly recommend you get it. I will put the link in the description box of the Amazon link or whatever link Marty wants. And highly recommend you get that book and read this story. I mean, I only touch on a lot of things. The neat thing about the book is the way he tells it, and it's a little bit of semi-fictional, I think, in the conversations. You do feel like you're there, you're living through all the happy times, and getting a lot of that background history, like the little motor car or just the things going on at the farm that happened in those days. Oh my gosh, these insects, I'm going to get carried away. All right, let's take a little walk here, and maybe we start right off with the foundation. Take us.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
So the house, I saw a picture of the house on Marty's Facebook.
Correct.
Apparently in the 19-somethings, 50s or 40s, it burned down.
Yeah.
Or it got knocked down, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm not sure on the history of that, but I would say that we, it definitely stood post-murder.
Right.
So this is the first time I've been to the house
Oh,
probably
wow.
in a few years.
Look at this.
Yeah, it's hard maybe.
It's a basement?
Yeah, so this is the basement. Here, we can pull this back.
Okay, let me come over here. Wow, if you didn't know, you'd fall in.
Correct.
I didn't even see this.
Yeah, so you come around here.
Okay.
Get a good look.
Oh yeah.
So there's actually off to your left here. There's what would have been the cellar, the stairwell.
Oh yeah.
So if someone were to enter the house, into the basement, you'd come in through this stairwell here on the left.
Oh yeah.
And as is typical with these old places, it's a fairly small footprint, right?
Right, it is much smaller than I thought. Look at that stonework. That's the original stuff.
But with these old houses, the stonework, the footprint of the basement would have been about 2 to 3 feet narrower on all sides. So the actual house would consume, from this basement wall, another 3 feet in each direction. So the house would have carried a much larger footprint, right?
Okay, so it's like a little cellar in the middle.
Correct.
Because this is really tiny. I'm looking at it, it looks to be, oh gosh, maybe 10 by 15 at the most in feet.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 by 12.
And so you can imagine, typically you'd have like a staircase next to the cellar entrance, right? And so, at some point, school teacher would have walked in and encountered what she encountered that day right here.
Oh, so again, this goes down to right here, down to what was, and it's not that deep. Of course, the house was probably raised, but you're saying the entry to the house would have been right here?
Yeah, similar, right
above
around this area, either to the left or to the right of this.
Yeah.
So you'd have a staircase going up into the main floor.
Yeah.
And then this cellar door going down into this basement.
Look at that stonework. See if I can get a zoom in on there. Some very large stones used. So yeah, this is where she came and found them all. Kind of spooky. All right, well, let's keep going.
So there's a couple other original things on the site, Ron.
Okay.
You've got, watch your step.
All right.
You've actually got, if we cross this area, let's turn back maybe a little. If we cross this area, there's, I believe, an original chicken coop.
The original chicken coop.
Correct, and maybe, potentially also utility shed / chicken coop. And this is
and you said we were just talking about this a little bit. Is this the part you were talking about where you've never really investigated this?
Right, so I'm as close as I've ever been to this, and I've grown up here my whole life.
No way.
And now we own it. So
this is exciting.
Correct.
For you and me and us. Oh, look at this. Yeah.
Right, so you can see it's definitely been used by others throughout the years.
It's a water tank.
Yeah, fuel or water of some sort.
Yeah, could be fuel. Oh, there's a fuel tank. Fuel tanks are here. There's a couple of fuel tanks there.
Oh, sure.
And that would probably be a water tank. But anyway, okay. Yeah, look at the vent up there. And then if you look up, that looks like some old electrical.
I've never seen that.
Look at that. All right, let's walk to the front of it.
So when my grandpa bought this place in '88, he actually hadn't farmed before that. He was a step grandpa.
This is huge.
And he decided he was going to start farming this 200 acres, and he bought everything he needed. So I'd imagine that's likely his fuel barrel. And there's some parts in here, but this structure here would have been original.
Still got the wood shakes. Yeah, this is all the original. So we're going back early 1900s. Yeah. Very good. That's a big chicken coop. So I see those bleachers. They almost look like that's where the chickens would roost.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Again, this being the first time I've ever investigated this, more. It's always been referred to as the chicken coop, and now it looks like maybe at one point it had chickens, and most recently it was used as maybe a utility shed.
Right.
You can see there's various combine parts in here, so there's harvester parts and a couple of tires, and obviously this door didn't latch the last time somebody shut it. They leaned this post up against it, and it's been that way ever since.
Oh, okay. Let's see if it's the original hardware. Oh yeah, look at that. That looks original. I mean, if I were to guess, I'm not sure about those hinges. Could still get those at Ace Hardware.
Maybe somebody rebuilt the door?
Maybe, yeah, I'm thinking, but look at this. This is neat. All right. Very neat. That was bigger than what I had expected.
Yeah, likewise. So now we can walk through here. So Mr. Kleeman, as I understand it, was actually a renter.
Right.
He didn't own it. In fact, if I brought the abstract with and looked, there's no record of him in the abstract. There is a record of who owned it at the time, but there is no record of him. Let's go this way.
Okay.
Avoid the burning weed. There's no record of him actually owning it. So he was a tenant, and that wasn't uncommon. Having read some of the history here, it seems like there were oftentimes absentee landlords who would own the land and then would actually rent it, have a tenant who would then farm it, and they would share in the crop. And so
sharecroppers.
Yep. So you'd share in both the inputs, buying the inputs, and then the landlord would provide the land, and the tenant would provide the labor. And that was extremely common, especially for a lot of the folks that started out in those early days.
Right.
So this is some of the equipment my grandpa purchased back in the day.
Look at that old tractor. What's this here?
That's I believe a drill, an old cedar. So that would be something my grandpa, he wouldn't have used that. That would have been here prior to him. So a previous.
What's that called?
A drill. So this would be something that would seed the crop.
Oh.
So you'd actually, this cover would open up.
Okay.
And you'd place the seed in there, and then you'd pull it, and the seed would drop down, and it would actually plant the seed for you. There's a couple of them here.
Oh yeah, there's one over there. What is that long thing? Not that we're going to get too much into farming implements,
Sure.
but what is that? Something that carries the grain up to a elevator?
Correct. That's a bin. Or sorry, that'd be an auger that carries the grain up to some sort of a storage, like a bin.
Right.
So you dump it out of a wagon, as you can see back there.
Yeah.
This actually kind of tells a good story. You've got a combine,
Okay.
which would transfer.
Oh, that's all the way over there.
Yep, that Oliver combine, which would transfer the grain into a wagon, and that wagon would transfer it into this auger, which would then transfer it into some sort of a storage place. And so there's actually an old granary over here. My grandpa built maybe one of the last granaries in Minnesota that wasn't common to be building those in 1988.
Are you kidding?
So here's the original pump. And yeah,
look at that.
There it is.
So this is the pump Kleemans were using. Their hands touched this. Probably red jacket, huh?
Yeah, correct. So you can imagine this, this here going up and down. The pump handle actually, it's one of the unfortunate things of having an abandoned site. Somebody comes up here, and actually this was removed in the last decade.
Oh, it's too bad.
But it was a period correct handle there. But you can imagine that, if you were just interested in taking the edge off and you had got done working the land, you'd come up here, and it is a bit of a trek, and you would have kind of washed your face and washed your hands off like that, right? And leaned up against it. So this is something surely that the family and William himself would have utilized. And Ron, a couple of times, I've thought, because you can see the land here, it goes to that corner and back to that corner, and he would have William would have been working the land and come up here for some sort of relief. And if you just step over here a couple of steps, you can actually see the location. There's a stop sign in that intersection.
Where that pole is?
Yeah, correct. You see there's a stop sign there, and that's where the one-room schoolhouse was.
Oh, that's where it was. Of course. Look at that, yeah.
And so from this vantage point, Mr. Kleeman would have both been able, you can imagine his wife was at home in the house, tending to things around the place, and potentially his mistress, the school teacher.
Exactly.
Was right there. And from this vantage point, he could essentially get a gaze at both.
Yeah, the big mystery, right? Is that what happened? You have to wonder, the way the book is written, because there's no evidence. You just have to kind of skirt around it and make your own conclusion.
Correct.
But I mean, when you read the book at that point, did you go, oh, did the light bulb go off for you too?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it definitely did.
Okay. Well, gang, we are going to go from here to the actual schoolhouse. It's in, is it Rowena, is it called?
Correct.
Yeah, a little tiny, it's not even a town, it's like a location. The schoolhouse, they moved it there, so we'll go check that out. And thanks, Alex, for letting us do this.
My
This
pleasure,
is really
Ron.
cool. You're a great tour guide.
Thank you.
All right, let's go. Look at that. Now there's some machinery, guys. We're at a little place called Rowena, and really Rowena is just grain elevators, I would say. A couple of big grain elevators and a shed with a truck in it. Can't really call this a town, but anyway, why are we here? Well, first of all, we're about 10 miles west of the farm, the Kleeman farm, and the Kleeman farm is just north of Clements. And there's something here that I want to show you. Now we're artifact hunting. We're going to see a couple of artifacts. This is a big one. Not as big as the next one, but as big in size. And that would be, that would be the schoolhouse. This is where they, actually it looks like they repurposed the schoolhouse. Interesting. Saw a picture of it, but I didn't think it would be integrated into this whole grain, I guess it's a grain elevator, or grain storage, yeah. But look at that, I think it's, I can't say it's incorporated, but there's like a tunnel here and a connection. I don't know why that would be built that way. Maybe it's just integrated. But yeah, this is the Sunrise Schoolhouse, guys. The original schoolhouse. Wanda, Minnesota. Look at this old truck, huh? Wow. Very interesting. There's a big old toilet right in the middle here. Well, we're going to have to be a little careful. I definitely want to take a look inside here. Let me see. Let me just make sure there's not an easier way to go in other than this creaky front porch. Let's do some exploring, guys. I brought my flashlight. I don't think there's any other way in here. Into the schoolhouse, I mean. Old stuff, guys. Now you look for skeletons, huh? Oh, there's a cat over there, a cat in the hat. See the cat? There he goes. Yeah, you never know. So let's go to the back. And it is almost sundown here at the Sunrise School, just like the book. Nobody here. Let's take a quick look in this old grain elevator. Looks interesting. Now these are very dangerous. We did an episode of boys killed. Many people are killed in these things. And I'm not going to go in. Let's just take a quick look. You know, they would go in and scrape the corn. I guess we could go in. Whoa. This is spooky, guys. I don't know what that sound is. I wonder if that's an animal. Yeah, when the corn is in here, it can be like quicksand. And if you fall in this stuff, you sink. And you basically drown. Terrible way to go. Let's get out of here. That's not a good feeling in there. So there's the back of the schoolhouse. It's a pretty big schoolhouse, you guys. Much bigger than I thought. So again, this is the Sunrise School. This is where all the kids were taught. And this whole area, pretty common. The 1800s, early 1900s in these rural areas. Looks like there were 5 windows here. Yeah, and they just moved this thing whole. You can see these beams they used underpinning the, well, they took it right off the foundation. Neat. Here's more windows. Oh, it's great that they saved it, but it's in pretty bad shape. The roof is coming apart. All right, we gotta go in there. Gotta have a look inside. All right, so I'm thinking that the best way up is going to be right here. So I'm gonna, yeah, it feels okay. It's a little wobbly. And I'm just gonna climb up. And hopefully we don't go through the floor. Ooh, what was that? That was just that metal door there. All right, let's go inside. Let's go very slow. Look at that. There you see the plaster on lathe. That's how things were done in the olden days. Plaster walls, so the school had plaster walls. Look at this. An original window. Look at that. Now, I am guessing this might be the toilet room. So it looks like a very small room here. Hold on. Let's just take a quick look. Maybe this is the teacher's office. Look at that. The original rows for the... Oh no, this goes down to the basement. Oh, there's an animal down there. I saw something. I saw something move. Well, I'm not going to go down there, that's for sure, but I'll... Looks, it's not a cellar, it's more like a crawl space. Well, it's not a crawl space here, it's, you know, they brought it here. That's just actually not a crawl space, guys. It's just on the underpinned beams sitting up in the air. Let's look in here real quick before we go in the main room. Oh, it's like walking back in time. Look at this. Just imagine the workmanship. You can see the original plaster. Look at that. You can see the original plaster on the lathe, the wood lathe. And I'm looking up at the ceiling, and they had a plaster ceiling also. Very intriguing. Wow. Let's go look at the main room. Again, I'm just going slow here. And this is the classroom. Here we go. Oh, look at the lights. Come on. Look at this. Let me see if I can get an angle here. Look at that. The old lights. Let me see if I can lift this up for you guys. Look at that. The original lights. How cool is that? There's 4 of them. But there's not much else. I see a sink here, but that's more modern times. I don't see any. I'm sure any artifacts were taken, but look at this, the original wood floor, tongue and groove. Look at that. That's original. Ah, it's too bad it's in such disrepair. Yeah, it's just being exposed to the elements. Look at that, roof is coming apart. Oh, and there's a loft. I'm not going up there. But I see some artifacts up there. I see some artifacts, so I will try to get, let me get the light. We'll see if we can get an angle for you guys. To see the door. Yep, there's some bed springs, looks like. Neat. Who knows what's up there? Very interesting. Very interesting. Wow. All right. Let's get out of here. Carefully. guys. So, we are going to go to the museum right now, and we're going to see an artifact, a really intriguing artifact. Not a big artifact, it's a small artifact, but it's big. Like, it's the axe, the actual axe. Let's go. Okay, gang, we are now at the Redwood County Museum here in Redwood Falls. And we are going to take a look at the central artifact, which is the murder weapon. And there's Austin.
Howdy.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
All right, so let's go see who do we got in here. I think that's Rick over there. How you doing?
Hi.
And Mr. Scott Larson.
How do you do?
Scott's been good enough to let us get access to this artifact. Actually, I haven't been in here. This looks like a really cool museum. And, well, without further ado, let's go take a look. And
A little bit about the museum. It's a 1908 poor farm,
okay,
one of two remaining in the state of Minnesota. And it got ultimately turned into the Redwood County Nursing Home in the 40s, 50s. And then as the nursing homes were built up around the area in the 70s in Minnesota, southwest Minnesota, this became vacant. And so the Historical Society said, we'd love to be in that 1908 building. The building's in great shape. Building inspector said, tip top, not a crack, doesn't leak, it's yours. So we rent it for about $1 a year, I think is the going rate nowadays for a 1908 building. But in southwest Minnesota, actually in the state of Minnesota, every county was required by law to have what they call a poor farm back in the day.
okay.
Yeah. So the history in this building is another story.
Well, it's very interesting. And
Stuff comes in every day, like this.
Really?
This came in yesterday. We have to archive it. But anyway, World War I, a trunk from a local doctor.
That certainly caught my eye. Well, I'll follow you guys.
That's another story too, yeah.
All right, go.
Austin? Okay.
Austin's going to lead us.
Austin is an intern this year, and he will
okay.
help us out. This will be a good experience for him.
Where are you going to school, Austin?
SMSU over in Marshall.
Okay.
Yep.
Great school. Oh, look at this. Now, we have privilege to come here off hours, so everything's not on, but boy, it looks like there is a lot to see here.
There's probably over 100,000 items.
100,000
Over,
items.
well over. There are closets full of stuff.
Ooh, looks like a hospital room here, huh? Look at this. One of the old desks, and look at, there's a roll top. There's even entries. The old entries in ink. Oh, I see something interesting. Now, this is not something you have out, huh?
No, we usually have it in the archive room.
So it's not the little hand axe. This is
Yeah.
This is the big axe. I don't know why, but I was picturing the smaller one. Interesting. So I remember reading from Marty's book. He was saying that the night that it happened, that William Kleeman was sharpening the axe, and even one of the kids came, "Daddy, what are you doing?" So it's, wow, this is something to see the actual axe. There it is, guys. Such a sad thing that happened for everybody. Just looks like an old axe, right? Wow. So where do you just keep it locked away
We
usually?
usually keep it in the library, kind of away from the public.
Right. Do a lot of people come here to the museum and then say, hey, what about the Kleeman axe? It doesn't seem like it's this big story
we wanna
here.
be like Redwood Falls Historical Society,
Right.
all these different artifacts. We don't want to be the William McKinley murder house or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't really want to celebrate this sort of thing. So if they ask about it, yeah, we'll show it off, but we don't want to make it the main attraction.
You don't want to glorify it
Yeah.
either. Yeah. I had said, guys, when we came here that this would be something, this is, we're respectful, and we're looking at an artifact here. We're not into, glorifying it or sensationalizing it. Just wanted to see and really appreciate it, you guys, letting us see it. I pictured something totally different. I don't know why. I pictured like smaller. I mean, and what's interesting is there's like the ones that, like I have a couple of these up north, and this has like a curve to it. Mine are like straight. So in the old days, maybe, and but it's in remarkably good condition here. Well, there it is, guys. All right, from here we are going to go to the cemetery, and we're going to pay our respects, and I'm going to talk to you all about some ancestry stuff and some things we found out that maybe help give context to the story and maybe pull some things together. I know one big question that you're all asking, the same question I asked, that everybody asked, is we're gonna talk about that as we pay respects. All right, see you there, and thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
No
I know
problem.
you're hiding back there.
Take care.
All right, gang. We'll see you. Let's go to the cemetery. Thanks.
Cool.
Okay, gang. We are now at the Redwood Falls Cemetery in Redwood Falls, 10 or 15 miles to the north of everything, and the sun is going down. It is sunset here. Kind of ironic. I didn't plan this, but it gives me pause. But we're going to walk to the unmarked graves. There is one marked grave there of the Petrie family. We're going to go to Maud's grave. Clara and Henry are buried there also. And I'm going to tell you some very intriguing things that have not been discussed before about this case. So let's take the walk, and I'll kind of talk about where everybody ended up and what happened, but then I'm going to throw a bombshell at you. I think is a bombshell. I think you will agree. So what happened? Well, we saw the Sunrise Schoolhouse. We saw the axe. I can tell you that the Sunrise Schoolhouse, which had opened in 1904, was used until the 1960s, the late 1960s, before it was closed. William's parents, August and Minnie Kleeman, survived their son William by more than 30 years. They died within a year of each other, which often happens. August passing first in December of 1948, and Minnie passed just 4 months later, 1949. Mary Snelling moved to Huntley, Minnesota, to room with her sister Esther. And by the way, this is all out of Marty Seifert's book. Mary died on October 12th, 1918, only a year and a half after the murder. She was very young. You have to wonder. But Henry and Clara Petrie, they stayed here in Redwood County, and they also died within a short period of time of each other. Clara passed away in November 1938, and Henry died less than 8 months later, July 1939. Broken hearts for life, guys. And when one goes, the heart not only breaks, it stops. The grave of a baby here. Now I've got some news for you that I think is kind of bombshell news, and I've informed Marty, and I'm going to turn this information to Marty. Shout out to Deb. Deb really is the one responsible for, well, working together with me, but Mary Snelling is not her real name. And we did some checking on her, and I'm going to read. There's a lot of information. But her real name was Ruth Jane Snyder, okay? And there was indeed possibly a son, and that's what we're going to talk about. Here's the deal. I mean, you have to have thought when they had, when I say the son, you have to imagine that they had that discussion. You had to come to the same conclusion I did. I called up Marty and I said, William Kleeman and Mary Snelling had to have an affair, and she was pregnant. That's why she was sick. It was morning sickness. Now, Marty, there's no evidence of this. Marty can't put it in the book. Got to kind of work around it. Did the right thing. But very interestingly, Deb did a lot of ancestry work on this, and we found some clues that are pretty darn compelling with this whole story. And I'm going to tell you a few things here. Her real name, Ruth Jane Snyder, and we did find a son. You know, again, she was with her sister, so you have to wonder if she bore the baby. They did not have a lot of abortions in those days, especially if, you know, families had money. So you see, I think everyone questions, what about the boy or daughter? I mean, child. There had to be a child, right? If this theory plays out. I mean, you have to think of the motive, right? Why all of a sudden William Kleeman changed. Like Jeckle and Hyde happening right after the drop-off at the train station. I mean, it seems obvious. The shame, like if she was pregnant and that's what the doctor had said, the shame upon the family alone in those days. The illegitimate, the whole thing. So it just seems like that's the motive. It just seems obvious. We followed the cookie trail and we found a man that is Jane's and was Jane's half-brother. And his name was Earl Ray Dorman II. He was killed in a car accident when returning home from Jane's father's funeral, unfortunately. But here's the thing that is interesting, if you think about it, is, and I was talking to Deb, and Deb said, you know what? The son of a father that takes the same name is usually a junior. But when it's the second, it could be a cousin named after an uncle or something. So it kind of brings in more play, like, was there an illegitimate child passed off? Was that him? I'm not saying that you can draw any conclusions from it, but it kind of raises the eyebrow a little bit. Now, Earl Ray Dorman II, who we think could be the son of the teacher, Ruth Jane Snyder, and William Kleeman, and we're stating this right here. Maybe half a chance, I don't know. But unfortunately, he was cremated. So you say, cremated. Now what? Because you know where we're going with this. We want to do DNA, right? Isn't this, you know, and I don't think we're going to be exhuming bodies, but you're looking at the lineage, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. It's like, dead end, darn. But then Deb came through and she found out that he did have a son. And that son was named the third. And there are grandchildren. There are people that are still alive that have possibly, if they are, descendants of the child, if it was a child from William Kleeman and the teacher, Ruth Jane Snyder. There is living DNA right now. So I don't want to give too much information out anymore because I don't want people descending upon the privacy of all these people. So what I'm going to do is we're going to gather it all up, we're going to summarize it, and I'm going to give it to Marty. And kind of like some of the other stories, Rosemary Peterson and the Benders, we're going to stay in touch and try to keep you guys posted and see what might be the outcome of this, which is very intriguing. But I have to say, did you not come to the same conclusion if you've read the book? As I told the story, you had to wonder, right? And here is the grave. The grave of one of the Petries, a William H. Petrie, born in 1902, passed in 1909. But we do know, and I verified this with Marty, that they are all buried here. Maud, her parents, and they're unmarked. And they're unmarked, I'm sure, for a reason. Because in the day this had a lot of notoriety and went gawkers and ghouls and weird people, but I checked this out. This is Jensen. This is somebody else. But yeah, so they are here, right here, resting in peace. So I did bring a couple flowers for Clara, for Maud, and I guess we'll put them right here. So that is a story from Redwood Falls, and I can only hope that we can keep following this cookie trail, and we'll just see where this goes. Okay, we will see where this goes. I think it's going to go somewhere. I think that is the son of William Kleeman, and Ruth Jane Snyder kind of tie the story up. That's what everyone thinks, the neighbors here. No one will say it's hush hush, but that's what they think happened, and maybe we can help prove it with DNA. Who knows? All right, signing off. Rest in peace to the Petries and to the Kleemans, who are buried here also, not here, but in the cemetery. Rest in peace, all. Rest in peace.